Good morning, everyone. It's Rollie. It was taking a little bit of time to boot up into live this morning. So I guess the internet is a little just as chilly as our building is this morning. We had to turn on the heat. So welcome everybody to Chatting with Wisdom. And so today we have a new guest. And as you know, Chatting with Wisdom is all about being able to empower women. So Laura Martin is a certified IBS Nutrition Consultant and a founder of Healing to Happy, an online holistic gut-brain focused company that helps women suffering from IBS and anxiety to get back to eating normally without fear of restrictions. After battling her way through IBS, hypothyroidism, anxiety, hormonal imbalance, and skin issues, she found herself with an unhealthy relationship with food and knew that there had to be a better way. After many failed attempts and lessons learned, she came up with this one method known as F.R.E.E., the acronym F.R.E.E., so F.R.E.E. method that put her symptoms into remission without following restrictive diets or fancy supplement regimens. And yes, that nutrition routine now includes pizza without running to the bathroom. By applying this method using food, lifestyle, radical shifts, and consciousness and mindfulness practices, practices plus tools, she's gone on to help hundreds of women around the globe. Apparently, I can't read today either. Do the same through online courses, signature gut recharge program, and one-to-one accelerator program. So, welcome, Laura. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. So apparently my new tongue would actually start functioning, probably help a little. But I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation because this is something that I hear from a lot of people that are struggling with IBS, that have those, and not just IBS. There are other types of gut health conditions that probably some of these things that you talk about will probably be really helpful as well, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. The gut is a powerful little force that once we learn how to work with it, it changes everything.
So do you want to tell me a little bit more about what is it that you do with people?
Yeah, so I specialize in the GutBrain Connection because from my own journey and then ultimately my studies and my specialty, I found that low FODMAP diets and restrictions just aren't really what it is because IBS is a nervous system issue. So it doesn't make sense to keep pulling away foods and really get, a disordered relationship with food. And, myself, I had an eating disorder for over a decade. And so when they're like, okay, so you have to go on low FODMAP and restrictions, it was like, that's like walking into a bar. Like, I'm not doing that, and I had to come up with another. I mean, I did go that route and became very obsessive, got very underweight, and that's how the other health issues came about. And so I help women that are struggling in that arena where it's like, I just want to eat normally. I want to live normally. I want to feel like I can go out to eat with my girlfriends and go on dates and feel like I have control over my body. I want to be able to just go on a vacation and not worry. And that's not really what we're told, like anytime you Google IBS, you're stuck with it forever and you have to stick to this crazy restrictive diets and fear everything about, everything in the world. And it's like, oh, great. Like, what do I do now?
So how long did it take you before you were able to come up with these methods?
Oh, man. It was a 3.5-year journey until I actually started to see progress in what I was doing because I did, I had to try all the routes. What we were learning in school is all the theories, like go raw, go keto, go low FOD, go, low carb. And so I tried all the routes until finally coming up with this whole thing when I was sitting in my naturopath's office, like at my wit's end. I'm like, I specialize in this stuff. Like, what the heck is going on? And she's like, do you want to talk about how your depression is linked to it? I'm like, not particularly. So it was like a year after that when I was like, okay, I've literally exhausted all my options. I'm ready to take a look at my mental health and how do I eat to support that and what's all going on there. So overall, about 4 years, I would say, to come up with the whole thing.
So, and I really like your honesty about dealing with that mental health, right? So many of us just want to push that under the rug. No, I've got a handle on it, right? I don't need to deal with that. It's not really happening. It's not really playing a factor when in fact, it probably plays one of the biggest factors, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that's a thing that I didn't piece together, because I had lost my mom unexpectedly at 22 and then chose horrible life decisions for about 2 years after that, got into like abusive relationships, abused my body, that whole thing. And even then I was like, no, like I'm only going to focus on food as the issue. I'm going to obsess about every diet, because if I'm obsessing about a diet, I don't have to think about that,
Yep.
And so it was finally after realizing that whole thing, which that takes years. That takes more than just going on a diet gut healing approach. That's why my practices now, it takes on the whole, science with soul kind of vibe, because it's like there is something that happened that set off the body to go into this fight or flight response, whether it's big T trauma or little T trauma. Something somewhere in your body went, like we're not doing this right now, and goes on to tell the story of autoimmunities to digestive issues to hormonal imbalances, all that kind of stuff.
So where is the first place that you start with your clients? So like, do you start with the food, or do you start with identifying what it is that's triggered with food?
Yeah. So the method that you spoke about, F.R.E.E, F-R-E-E, it can apply to food. It can apply to anxiety. It can apply to business, right? We have to start with F, the foundation. Where are you, and what's the main thing you want to change? So some clients, that's food. Sometimes they want to get a handle on the nutrition. Some people, that's their mental wellness. Some people, that's their relationships, wherever that is. But where are you, and how does that affect your life? And how is that impacting your life? And that's where you have to start tracking for a week. So say it is nutrition, beyond just calories or, are we eating FODMAPs or anything like that? We have to be paying attention to how often are you eating? How are you feeling about what you're eating? When are you eating? How are you eating? Are you standing up, sitting down, hunched over at your desk? Like what's happening there? What types of foods are you eating? And then from there, we can start to reframe and rewire. But if we don't know what your daily habits are, I'm just giving you something that's not going to actually stick. And that's why, like in my company, it's about the triangle, because the bottom is mindset. And then what sits on top of it is lifestyle and nutrition. Because if you don't know what you're doing, this is why diets don't work. This is why we get trapped in elimination cycles. This is why we get hung up on, keto, carnivore, low FOD. Like we just keep giving them different names, but they're the same thing, just with a different kind of bracket, So we'll start there and start tracking. Granted, before we even start working together, they've gone through a series of tests, right? When it comes to the gut, you need to test, especially when it comes to things like SIBO, parasites, overriding bacteria, things like that, candida, which we all have inside of our bodies in and of themselves. We have bad bacteria, we have yeast, we have parasites, we all do. It's just, why do they get overrun? And we want to make sure that's not the issue before we start working on the other things, because yes, you have to kill those off in certain ways first, whether you do the herbal route from like a functional doctor, or you do use antibiotics from, Western medicine. You have to start there, because you can't really build on top of that. But if you don't actually do the root work as to why that infection started to begin with, you're just going to keep getting trapped in that cycle, which is why people see consistent candida overgrowths or consistent SIBO outbreaks months after months after months, and it's not going away. So those two places are generally where we start.
So where is it that, so for people that are watching that have not been diagnosed or have not seen, but like there's some gut, they suspect that there may be some gut things, or what are some of the symptoms that they actually will notice that there's something going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's that chronic state, right? Like it's beyond just, I got some bloating after like Thanksgiving, like that's normal. But it's that chronic state where you're kind of seeing on TikTok nowadays, and they're trying to normalize it of like, I woke up this morning, I had one bite and now my stomach is there. I'm like, that's not actually normal. Just because that's common, that is not normal. And we need to get that checked out. Yes, you can still have the body confidence and love yourself, and you should totally do that too. But like, you got to go deeper than that. Or you'll have things like acid reflux. You'll have extreme food sensitivities. You can have hormonal imbalances. You can have skin outbreaks. It's your last organ of detoxification. Honestly, everything, mood disorders, mood swings, depression, anxiety, like it all stems from our gut. Granted, it's not quote unquote the IBS thing, which really isn't even like it's basically, we don't know what's wrong with you. You just have irritation in your gut. But any irritation in your body that is showing up somewhere that you're having a chronic reaction to, you can go back to your gut.
And because we hear a lot about that, right? So like there's like this kind of drink that actually has gut health benefits, or this kind of product has gut health benefits. And so it's obviously something that's common enough because companies are creating things to be able to help with these things. And so when you're working with clients who are trying different products and stuff, what's the approach that you take?
Yeah. Gut health has turned into a very sexy market that is so overwhelming right now. And I can't. I honestly like, because you can tell where people are just finding it out and they're making these things. And like, even this morning, I had a friend message me asking if warm lemon water in the morning helps you drop 10 pounds. I was like, no, like, this is why the internet is, no, stop it. TikTok's not true. Please stop doing it. When it comes to supplements and things, again, that's a one-on-one basis. So I never like to really diagnose anything in that arena. But I'll have clients starting with, what is your nutrition? Oftentimes, on average, people eat 16 times a day. We're so hung up on either fasting and sticking in between our window, or calories and making sure we're under our calories, but we're grazing throughout the day. And yes, that M&M that you stole off your kid's plate as you're passing through the kitchen, that counts. It still counts because you have to use digestion to break that down, you know? So that's one place I start with how much has massive impact. Getting women, specifically women of reproductive age, off fasting. That's another thing. Like, I know sometimes it hurts to eat. We want to avoid the bloating and things like that. And we're stuck on this weight loss thing, which we got to do some work on. But when your body is already showing you signs that you're stuck in fight or flight, which is, IBS, which is hormonal imbalances, which is mood swings, we cannot starve our body and think it's going to be okay. She's going to freak out at you and be like, excuse me, miss. Like, and that's not going to work for me, Yeah. And so really wrapping our heads around that. And because it's so sexy nowadays, it's so hard to sit with people on that, because they're like, no, like this is what's been working. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, long term, that's not actually what works. Breaking down, what are your meals, like meal density. A lot of us, we stick with our lighter foods. We stick to salads, we stick to soup, we stick to yogurt, we stick to smoothies, like that kind of things. When they're not bad. I'm not shaming them, but they don't have much nutrient density. So I'm looking at things that are darker in color. I'm thinking of fall foods, hearty stews, hearty soups, organ meat, like things like that, potatoes, things that grow from the ground. Like, this is the perfect example of the season of the types of foods you're supposed to be eating, because even thinking of that, they're heavy, which means they have so much nutritional value inside of them that your body needs. And yes, you might feel a little bit, heavier because they're heavier meals, but like, your body is going to thrive when you give it that kind of energy, because she needs that energy right now to repair. So it's really that kind of stuff, as opposed to, these healthy drinks and these things out there. I'm like, just please stop doing that. Like, they're not helpful.
So when somebody comes to work with you, how does that work? So how do they tap into accessing services with you, and like, what's their experience?
Yeah, so I personally love running free masterclasses at least once a month, because that's how I started when I couldn't afford anything. So I do one of that. I have Facebook groups and things like that, just so you can get a flavor of my teaching style, because it is different. Like, we all are different. We got to find our cup of tea of what we want to stick with. And then from there, it's either, if it's a one-on-one coaching position that you want to come into, we'll come on, we'll see if it's a good fit. We'll talk about the options that are going, because yes, I know my stuff, but we want to make sure that it's a good fit together. Like, you don't want it to feel like this, but, and you can't relate kind of thing. It's like, no, you want it to be this mutual mentorship kind of vibe. And so that'll be a 30-minute consultation. And you also get to ask questions, obviously, to figure it out. And then I have automated program, or not even automated, they're live. So the one that's coming up in the middle of October is the Labyrinth. That one's the GutBrain Connection course. And I do them live. So it's like you're FaceTiming me, which is very nice. And so you actually get your questions answered. It's this like one-on-one support in a group setting, which is really nice, because it's being in community where women get you. Or I have like the Gut Recharge, which is automated, but we have live Q&As. So you get to watch the recordings. And then on Fridays we come in and it's like, grab a cup of tea and let's have a chat and things like that. It's very hands-on, which is my kind of vibe, because that's exactly what I was missing when I was going through this journey.
And I think that I know that, again, I know that even with my programs, that's one of the things, that it's that live connection. Like that is like the biggest value of being able to have those opportunities to be able to have the conversation, and as opposed to just the question and answer, right? So like typing off the question, typing off the answer. I think that interaction. So I think that that's fantastic. That's one of the things that you offer, because I think that that's incredible in terms of the experiences, right? So like there's sometimes just one little tiny thing that doesn't fit with something that may have been said, because this is not part of your lifestyle, or not part of what it is that's going on. And just that one little tweak can potentially make a huge difference in having that conversation.
Oh, definitely. And that's what was the biggest thing, because I first started this when I was still living in Asia. So I was living in Thailand. So I was having to give advice, and I still do. Like I have clients in the Philippines, I have clients in Bangkok still, I have clients all over, where it's like they don't have the same grocery stores we have. They don't have the same things. So you have to be able to show up live and be like, okay, so what I would do where you're at. And like sometimes, even if it's like Australia, I've never been there, I've never lived there, I don't really know, but I can Google something really fast and be like, okay, or this is what I would search, and this is how you can go about searching, so that you can really adapt it to no matter where you are, no matter what lifestyle chapter that you're in. Maybe you're a new mom, maybe you're post-menopause. Like, where are you in this kind of cycle? And you're able to ask the question, being like, how would I apply this to my life?
Yeah, because it really does have that impact. And like I know that even in programs that I'm in, is having those live opportunities makes a huge difference, to being able to have that conversation. And so it really does have that impact. So what are some of the other things that people need to be taking a look at when, and I know that this can probably go on forever and ever and ever in terms of conversations, but like, what are the most important things that they need to be kind of looking at when they are starting to take some action, or wanting to be able to see some change?
Yeah. So let me start by breaking down the gut-brain connection, because that might give some insight. So like I said earlier, IBS is a nervous system issue. So your gut and your brain are in constant communication with each other through this thing called the vagus nerve, which is your longest cranial nerve. It goes from your brainstem to your gut, and it tells all of your organs and your survival thingy bits what to do and how to function. But you don't have to tell it to do so. This is the one reason why it's called the second brain. It runs entirely on its own. The other reason is that your gut is home to as many neurotransmitters as your brain. Oftentimes, especially in this nice little digital world we live in, it gets confused. The serotonin that's in your gut does not go to your brain. That's not how that works. But the stimulation and the blood sugar levels and the inflammation and the things that are happening because of the food in your gut will set off the alarm bells in your brain, which is how we get anxiety and depression. And then when the alarm bells are going off in our brain, anxiety and depression, the blood flow, because of the enteric nervous system, will go to the other survival organs, like our heart, our lungs, our muscles, things like that, not our digestion and not our hormones, which is why those two usually go hand in hand, and which is why they're big problems nowadays. Because right now, I was reading a study that the average young adult has as much anxiety as a 1950s psychiatric patient. Yeah. So our blood flow, it's not our fault. It's just we got to identify these things, that like the reason our bodies aren't functioning optimally and we're getting stuck in these traps is because we're stressed so much, because we're in fight or flight. It has nothing to do with because you had gluten or dairy last night at your girl's cheese night. Like, that's not really, maybe for a little bit that's the thing, but like the more stress and guilt and overwhelm and worry we have about that, that's actually the problem. And so when we can bring it back and kind of understand, oh yeah, like that makes sense. So obsessing about this low FODMAP diet and making sure there's unless I have an actual allergy where I need an EpiPen or something like that, sensitivities can be fixed. Intolerances, like histamine intolerance and lactose intolerance, they can be fixed when our organs start to function optimally and give them the right nutrition. And so when we work our way backwards that way, it actually gives hope. And it's just really simply like understanding actually how the body works, which I understand. I didn't learn that. Like my farthest thing in nutrition was how to pick up a fork and put it in my mouth. Like I didn't understand anything beyond, or the pyramid or anything like that. Like it wasn't really anything like that. So when you break it down of, oh yeah, so it's not food. It's just, my body being stuck in fight or flight. It's working our way backwards. Yes, food matters. Like I said, nutrient dense foods will help to replenish the storage in our body that are, overworking and overriding each other. But really it's what are your lifestyle practices that are putting you in this fight or flight? And we can't eliminate it. We have the lights, we have the technology, we have these things. We live in a modern world. We can't eliminate them all. But like, what is a day-to-day that you can be like, okay, especially around your meal times? Like, how can you calm down and eat in a way that feels nourishing so your body can actually absorb the nutrients again?
Well, and one of the things that I really think is interesting is that you talk about lights. And so inside our building, we had our kids program yesterday. And so but because like there's no one else working, there was just me, and I do daylight. So I prefer daylight. And I know that when you're doing video, you're supposed to have like all these lights on, and I can't do it. It just drives me absolutely bonkers. So I have the shadows and I have the whatevers, even when I'm on video, simply because for me, like having all that light is just too stimulating. And so I had a mom that was actually going to be waiting, because sometimes they wait, sometimes they don't. And so the mom was actually waiting in the waiting area, and so she and all the lights were all down and dim, and she's also a teacher, so she was in she had just come out of being like around all the stimulation of being at work. And so I said, so do you want the light on? And she's like, no, I'm good. And I said, I prefer the lights off, because then I just have that and it's just this dim light of energy. And because I find the lights definitely too stimulating, and because I have to be on the computer, and then I'm on my phone, and there's things going on, and you can hear the buzzing in the background, and all those things. And so just being able to keep the lights down just allows me, like that works for me, to be able to keep things down. My husband, that doesn't work for, because he needs the actual light to be able to see. So for him, it's a visual thing. So like, yes, it's nice and calm and relaxing, but I can't see in front of my nose, like, cause like it's too dark. Right. Yeah. So like, but that's one of the ways that I can try and eliminate. And that's something that I know. Right. So it's like, let's just keep the lights down, and not use the big overhead lights and that kind of thing. Right. So
exactly. I mean, the only thing I have is this like oral light, because otherwise it's literally, that's why like when we first got on, like I have like every candle is all around, and my partner too, he comes in and he'll be like, I can't see my plate that I'm eating off of. And I'm like, why do you got to see your plate? Like, you know where your mouth is, you know where the plate is, like, because I rise and fall with the sun and all the candles go up. And he's like, okay, fine. And I'm like, don't you sleep better at my house though? Like, that's like.
Well, and that's the same as like, even my husband hates it, because like I open up the windows, the curtains and stuff at night, because he closes them all up in the morning, or like at night when like it's starting to get dark and lights are coming on, so that people can't see inside. And like, I don't really care if you can see inside or not, but then before going to bed, it's like opening the windows so that the curtains, so that we're there when morning comes, that I'm actually getting that rise. And especially now that we're moving into fall, and having those shifts, is that now it's going to be getting darker where we are, and because we're further up north then, and so it's even that much, at least I think, because I've never lived in the South, so I think that it's actually a little darker, but I enjoy having the daylight of coming and going. That's something that's really important.
Exactly. And I mean, and that's like how our bodies work when we actually pay attention to that. Yes, there are some like night owls, but it's when you're struggling with like health issues, it's your core body temperature that's controlling your circadian rhythm. So if you feel like things are really cold in your house and the lights are on, like it even feels stale and cold when that's how it is. Yeah. And if we want it to be warmer, we want our core body temperature to go down so that we can sleep better at night. And then that actually helps to change our moods. That changes our digestion, because everything happens in our sleep. That's just how it works. And so we just got to kind of get into this rhythm of, how do I like make me warm in the evening? Not like necessarily like turning your thermostat down to 80, because you do want to sleep in colder temperatures, but like how do you make yourself feel like warm and fuzzy, like the actual like like soothed? How do you want to soothe yourself in the evening? It makes such a difference.
It really does. And it's about those patterns. And like you said, like being able to look at what are some of the habits and some of the patterns, and what is it that's happening, and how can you make that shift? And so because one of the things that I do is I work with a lot of people that have anxiety, women in particular. And so being able to have an idea of how this is going to impact them makes a huge difference, right? So paying attention to that fight, flight, and freeze, right? So like those different things. And I love how you actually help to correlate it between because I've heard the gut brain, right? So I've heard that, but I didn't understand, like I've never gone back and looked into it further, but it's like, it's beautiful to be able to have that understanding, because one of the things that happens is that when your body, when something is happening, then you get nauseous, right? And or you vomit. And so like, because like when there's panic, then stuff that's happening, then like that happens. And so and that makes perfect sense to being able to, so like, and we live in a world of everything is anxiety based right now. And especially in the last 2 years have been like overrun. But you were talking about the study where you were saying that about the kids being in, like being labeled, like not labeled, but connecting to being in a 1950s psychiatric patient, right? So like, that's huge. And that's like, wow, like this is just mind blowing. Like, I know that the kids have a lot of stress, but so do the parents, and so do the people that are around them. And so then that just heightens their anxiety on top of that. And so that's one of the reasons why I have the kids program that I offer, simply because kids are just so overrun and with that, everything that's going on. And even in the last 2 years with everything that's been going on, my program for the kids has shifted a little bit, simply because they need different kinds of interactions and stuff right now that allows them. So like we do a little bit more games, and we do a little bit more depending on the kids in the group and the energy of whatever it is that's going on. So yes, we still do the talking, and yes, we still do like, how are we managing with the anxiety, and we do the meditations and that kind of thing. But it's shifted a little bit because of the fact that the kids are just so overstimulated with everything that's going on, that we need to make sure that they have that opportunity to just kind of just stay in a more calm, in a more calm state.
So true. It's so, and like I had a client the other day, I was on the phone with her, and she was telling me how her daughter, she's like 7, she sneezed, and she goes, "It's just allergies." And I was like, oh my God, you poor little flower. Like, no, it's fine.
Yeah. Exactly. Like because they're so panicked. Like, I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but where I know that from the parents that have the kids that I have, my friends that have kids that are still in school right now, that's one of the things is like, if they sneeze, they have to come back home. If they do this, they have to, like, it's just crazy because like everything is all connected, and then they have to go home for risk of. And I know that when all of this first started happening, we had the kids that were in the program, and one of the things, because everything was happening at school, and so they were going around and they were playing tag, but it would be COVID-19. Like, it was like, it's not tag. It's like, I'm giving you my germs. Like it was actually kind of funny, but it's not. Right?
Yeah, it's not, because it's the real world.
Right. So, but it was like, oh my gosh, like this is just insane. Like they're attributing a regular game of tag to now you've got it.
Yeah.
Right? So, so like, it's just crazy as to some of the things that are going on. And we see, like, yes, there's lots of things that the adults are going through and things like that. But I think that the biggest eye opener for me most of the time is what's going on for the adults is how is it impacting the kids, and where the kids are being impacted gives you like the biggest clues as to what it is that's happening.
Exactly. Because they're the most heart-centered little beings that there are. Like, they walk so proud, and they're heart-centered and all the kind of stuff. And you're like, I love your emotional response. Like, it's so quick and clean. Like, let me follow what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and again, right? Like, it's at the mouth, out of the mouths of babes is one of the things that you hear, right? And so being able to tap into what is it that's going on for ourselves, and how to be able to make those changes so that we can have a different impact on our younger generations and like the people that are around us.
Exactly.
So is there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on that you think is really important for people to know?
I mean, just the main thing that I always say is, like, we can't be at war with our body and win. Like, it just, when we're in these fight or flight responses, when we're in this panic, whether it's our physical body or our mental capacity and our mental brain, like, what's going on, we can't be at war with it. Yep. You know, we can't think something's broken. We can't think, it's always, always, always a signal. That's it. It is a symptom, and we got to stop fearing, because we can't heal a body that we fear. We have to step into it and be like, okay, it is my personal power to do something about this. And when someone says, oh, you're stuck with it for a lifetime, be like, epigenetics, neuroplasticity, the microbiome changes in 72 hours. So like science, that doesn't make sense. Let me challenge this belief and find something that actually works for me.
Yeah.
And it comes from a space of just, you got to treat yourself like someone you love,
And I think, and I love that. I love that, that we need to treat ourselves like someone we love. And so I know that even with my, like even just going back, so like I always say, oh, this is allergy season for me, right? So I know that it still has to do with my lifestyle. I know that if I'm eating properly, if I'm sleeping properly, if I'm getting plenty of exercises, then I'm not getting the reactions that I'm getting right now, right? Like, so things have been extremely stressful for me. So I know that they're even that much more heightened than they normally would be. And they're just not letting go. But I know that if I do all the things that I should be, like making sure that something as simple as making sure that I drink enough water in a day, right? So like that just helps to be able to kind of bring things down. So like this has been a beautiful conversation, and we can, like I said, we can probably go on in many different rabbit holes, because that's really exactly what it is that that happens, right? There's lots of conversations. And so in the discussion here on Facebook and YouTube, I've put in the link for the labyrinth that you were talking about, Laura, and so that people have access to being able to touch that link. But even in the description of wherever they're listening to this, there's also your contact information for them to be able to reach out to you as well. So is there anything else that you wanted to share, or anything else that you thought was important?
No, just thank you for coming on, and thank you for doing what you're doing and showing up and creating these spaces for the adults and the children, and really making an impact on the whole globe. So thank you for having me be a part of that as well.
Well, thanks a lot for coming. And for everyone else, I will see you guys next Wednesday with another guest. Talk to you guys soon.